So, to be able to describe what it means for us as adults to be able to process all of the painful things from our childhood, sometimes we have to really think about what it means to process what's over as opposed to really still thinking that it's happening right now. So, to help teach my students and my clients about what it means for us to process all of these unhealed experiences from the past, even though we still feel distressed, even though we still feel as if it can take us out, I often talk about something called the coffee cup analogy. So here it is, the coffee cup analogy. So think about what it means to be held by someone else, to be held by another. And I don't mean in terms of physically, but to really feel emotionally held. Maybe at first you think immediately about what it means to be really held in physical space by someone's physical being, but it's actually more than that. It's actually the experience of someone holding our insides, someone holding our internal experience, us being held by others, someone external to us. Can they be present to us in our internal world? Can they be attuned to us in our emotional state? Stephen Cope often describes this as the ability to feel felt, that we really feel felt by someone external to us. So our brain, its continued neurodevelopment and capacity to process is really dependent on how our parents attune to us and our emotional states. So as children who've experienced complex trauma, we didn't have the mental capacity to process the traumatic experiences, and let alone in the absence of or in the confusion of miscommunication, misattunements, when those who were there in the outside world didn't know how to regulate us or contributed to that distress. So as children with complex trauma, we can look at, we didn't have the mental capacity to process these traumatic experiences without that support. So there wasn't an other, or there was confusion in us about wanting to reach for that person, that other outside of us. But at the same time, if that source of external support is the source of that same distress, it gets really confusing. So our little child brains don't know how to process this. So think about a coffee cup. When we're children, we have kind of metaphorically a small espresso size cup processing capacity. We have very limited capacity to process these experiences. We couldn't hold it all, if you will. It's like our cup runneth over. And as children, we didn't have the brain capacity to process these experiences because it felt bigger than us, the bigness of the emotions themselves. And in fact, the very distress, that sense of disappointment, that helplessness, that stuff that in maybe therapy in our adult life, we want to and have conflict though about looking at, we are still remembering that sense of helplessness and that sense of bigness from when we couldn't process it. We didn't have the capacity to process it back then. So think of it like our brain was this espresso-sized coffee cup. The cup was small, and with complex trauma, those feelings are big and messy and complicated and unpredictable. And without having that sense of being able to be held or supported by other outside of us, our cup runneth over. We had to throw out our awareness of our distress. And our parents' capacity to hold that distress, to be able to attune to us, to validate, in other words, to co-regulate, well, that's really what brought us back down to calm. That's the ideal. That's what helps us learn not have to throw out our emotions and have them overspill. So over time, what happens is then, because this co-regulation is really the building block of our ability to regulate ourselves as we grow to adulthood, so really when we get to an adulthood, we actually have, let's say, a larger brain capacity. We have a greater capacity to hold our emotional distress, a larger ability to process. We have a deeper neural network of resources. So instead of that espresso-sized cup, we actually have a larger cup. It's sturdier. It can hold more. We can hold it all. All of that distress isn't bigger than us. And even while the emotions from a childhood might seem as if they are, and that we wouldn't be able to hold it. Clients will say to me, well, I can't hold it all, or it's bigger than me, or I won't be able to handle it. I'll be overwhelmed by it. We are remembering when we're doing our healing work what it was like to have the espresso size coffee cup and not that larger, venti size coffee cup brain capacity. So in our own personal work, what we can forget is that we are remembering the feelings being experienced as if they are bigger than us. We are remembering the experience of having an espresso-sized coffee cup processing capability. But at a gut level, it's really important that we hold on to the fact that, and really at a gut level and in our bones, know that as an adult, processing this material that's the stuff of memory, even though it might not feel true, it's not bigger than us. We really do have the larger capacity to process what's disturbing. And those strategies that we used to use in the past to help us throw out the distress, to really manage the fact that our cup was runneth over, is really a habit for us, because we don't know that we actually do have a venti size coffee cup processing capability. We've just forgotten that these experiences and these feelings are not happening now, and they really are not beyond our capability to heal.